My guest this afternoon is Professor Helen James, who is Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Canterbury Christ Church University and has recently been awarded an OBE for services to higher education. Welcome to Can Do FM, Helen.
Andrea, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. Can't wait to have a chat with you.
Now then, you began this prestigious career, but
No,
yes, you did, and it is, and you began that here in Barrow. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how it all began?
yeah, absolutely right. So I'm from Barrow. I was born and brought up in Hollow Lane, actually, in Barrow. I went to New Barnes Infant School, St Paul's Junior School, and then secondary school was Thorncliffe. I didn't pass my 11 plus because they had 11 plus in those days. I didn't pass my 11 plus, so I didn't get to the grammar school. Went to Thorncliffe. And, whilst I was absolutely gutted at the time, I think in hindsight, it was absolutely the best thing that could have happened to me. So I didn't follow a typical academic route. I think because I went to Thorncliffe, I was involved with sport, I was involved with music. It was just a great education for life, as well as being able to study the subjects that you studied. So, and I love maths, I love physics. I know, bizarre, but I did.
Yeah,
I was quite good at them as well.
right. Okay, and then that took you on to college, and the sixth form college here in Barrow.
Well, I went to Barrow College of FE actually, because I left school at 16. So I left Thorncliffe at the age of 16, and I could have gone to the sixth form, and that was my second choice. But my first choice was an apprenticeship as a mechanical engineer in the shipyard. And I think, people must have just thought I was absolutely bonkers. If I think about the conversations in school, it was kind of, you don't want to do that. Why are you going to do that? Girls can't do that sort of thing. And I was one of four, and we were the very first four girls to be taken on as apprentice mechanical engineers, and that was 1978.
Right. Okay. And what did you come across any problems, and what were the challenges that you faced? I mean, it must have been quite a male dominated environment at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I just absolutely loved my apprenticeship. I can smell the apprentice, the training school even now, and I can smell the kind of the metal when I was in the North shop working. And I just love engineering. I just think it's absolutely great. And I kind of a bit of a laugh really, but at the end of my first year in the apprentice training school, I was awarded a steel rule. And I've never been so proud to receive a steel rule in my life, but I got it for almost being the top apprentice in the year. But no, I loved all the practical. And there were lots of G's about girls can't do this and girls can't do that. And I think probably at 16, you kind of just have a laugh with everybody.
Yeah.
And, I took it really seriously. I worked really, really hard and loved it. And I did really well at college, and I did really well within the apprenticeship as well. And actually in 81, so I'd been out on the shop floor by then, in the North shop and Smite, and also in the drawing office. And then I was awarded Premier Apprentice of the Year, which was the top apprentice out of all the years on the engineering side. And that was just brilliant. And because I'd done really well at college, the shipyard then sponsored me to go to university, and that's how I ended up going to university. Partly driven, to be honest, Andrew, because I found myself in the drawing office, and that really wasn't for me. I'm not one for sitting behind a drawing board, and I like to be up and about meeting people. And so going to university was my sort of a positive, but nevertheless it was an exit route. And that opened everything up.
And you did engineering at university?
Yeah, I did. I did general engineering, actually. I went to Leicester University, and I chose general engineering because up until then, everything I'd done was mechanical and manufacturing. I didn't know really whether I might like electrical or civil and structural. So Leicester was one of only two universities. The only other one was Cambridge University that did a general engineering course. In fact, what I ended up loving was the mechanical and manufacturing, and that's what I ended up specialising in my final year. Anyway, so yeah, I loved it, and also the materials side, materials testing and how things break and the strength of different materials. That was kind of really what I loved.
So from there, did you go back into industry then?
So from there, I did go into industry, but I didn't come back to Barrow. Right. What really was clear to me while I was in that final year of university, because all my peers were applying for jobs, and I couldn't resist that because I'd only ever been in Barrow, studied in Barrow. I didn't know what the big wide world was out there. So I kind of just tested the water a bit. And actually, I got offered every job I applied for. And really, that was because I'd got an apprenticeship behind me, because by then I'd qualified as a full mechanical engineer. I'd got my HNC and I'd also got my engineering degree. Yeah. And there were so few people on the market that had that mix of practical engineering as well as the academic. So, yeah, so it was great. And I went to Portsmouth. So Marconi Space Systems I went to.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of went from, I guess, missile launchers and submarines, I guess, up to the space. So I was testing and designing bits of satellites.
Right.
The S1 satellites was the particular one that I worked on as a systems engineer.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating stuff to be working with there then. So let's have a little break for some music, shall we? And we'll come back and discuss how you then got into higher education. Joining me on the afternoon show today, we have Professor Helen James, who has recently been awarded the OBE for services to higher education. Now, we were just talking, Helen, about your roots in Barrow and those early years and how you got into engineering. Now, you were working in industry, but you moved back into education, the education side of things. What drove you to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. So I loved being in industry and involved with design and the practical side of engineering as well. But actually, I'd always fancied doing some teaching. And I approached the local FE college in Portsmouth to see whether I could do some part-time evening classes. And bizarrely, they came back to me and said, well, actually, yes, we will. But there's a full-time vacancy coming up, and will you apply for it? So I applied for it, got it, probably a bit sooner than I would have wanted. I probably would have wanted to stay in industry a little bit longer, but I wasn't going to pass it over. So I got my first job in the FE college in Portsmouth, and then I was just browsing, and I can't remember why, but every now and again I look at the paper, and there happened to be a job in Barrow going. And it was the next grade up. So it was a lecturer grade 2 post. It was in the College of FE, where previously I'd been a student. I really fancied coming back up to Barrow. I was married by then, came back up to Barrow, got the job bizarrely, and Colin Mason and Bill Simpson, who Colin had been one of my lecturers and Bill Simpson was the head. They were the interview panel. So they kind of took the decision to recruit me. And I loved my time back in Barrow. Bought a house up in Foxfield. Worked in Barrow. Had my son. I was going to say my first son. I've only got one son. Jack. He was born. And then actually after a while, I was really missing the industry, and I was missing probably a bit more kind of higher level education. I fancied doing some research, and again sat in the common room. Happened to open the publication. And there was a job at what was then Brighton Polytechnic. It was just before it became a university. I applied for the job. Strangely, I got the job. So that was a senior lecturer.
Back down to the south coast.
Back down south, but back to Brighton this time. That was a senior lecturer. And then whilst I was there, I was then promoted to principal lecturer and got involved with industry engagement, research, postgraduate programs. And then I was asked to set up a completely new department in the university, which was all the business interactions and business development, legal, setting up new companies, spin out companies. Loved all that. And then I was headhunted for a job in North Wales, which was to create a university, actually. So we were in Institute of HE, create a university. And there was about 4 of us that were headhunted from different universities. We achieved that, absolutely loved that. While I was there, I started I set up a science centre, and that's partly linked with all my passion around young people and families getting involved with science and opening up universities for everybody and not thinking about it being exclusive. And then again, I was kind of itchy feet and ready for another move. And then that's how I then found myself in Canterbury. So back down to Canterbury, although I still live in North Wales.
Right.
So my husband...
And you've actually got an accolade from 2005 Welsh Woman of the Year.
I did, yeah. So contribution to science and engineering, which was fabulous. Yeah, it was really, I was really proud of that. Really, really great. Yeah.
Now, this is all. It all sounds absolutely exhausting, fantastic, but exhausting. What drives you? You is it you focus on women into engineering, or is it a little bit wider than that?
I'm passionate about engineering, and I'm passionate about the opportunities that engineering and technology and science actually, but particularly engineering, opens up to people. Engineering is everywhere. Everything you can see has a dimension of engineering. And I think one of the things that I think kind of opened my mind, being in Barrow, and you've got such a huge employer on the doorstep, I think, there's possibly a bit of complacency about engineering jobs and the prestige of being an engineer, because it's the main employer in the town. And you don't get that when you go to some of the areas and towns. Engineering is really, really held in high regard, and it's an economic generator of the region. And that's what drives me. I'm passionate about women in engineering. I'm passionate, but not just women in engineering. I'm passionate about people thinking about engineering that otherwise might not have thought about it.
Yes, I think that is still a problem, isn't it? That it's we don't kind of see how broad engineering is. Although when it's pointed out to you, of course you realise that, don't you? But it's still sort of like it's still the image of an oily workshop, really, and that of course is very, very limiting.
Well, I just work so hard to overcome that image. So I'm on a number of company boards, and I'm very much involved with the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, trying to get change of mindset, looking at publicity, challenging it all the time. And language is really, really important. And when I was doing a bit of research quite a few years ago now, one of the papers I cheekily wrote says something like, engineering is designed by men, delivered by men, taught by men, assessed by men, for men. How on earth are women ever going to succeed? But of course we do. Women do succeed. And my challenge over the last, 30, 40 years has really been about making sure engineering is more inclusive. So women are involved in the design of engineering education. We're involved in pushing the boundaries of teaching methods and assessment methods. Women are much better at coursework, at project-based learning, and not this rote learning that quite often can be, certainly in university education. And men do really well at that. Women don't, because women are asking, well, why? How does that work? Why should we be doing that? And so we've got to move the learning and teaching, the assessment, and that's kind of really what's behind most of my work. It's kind of challenge, but also supporting policy changes and influencing leaders. If you're looking at promotions, what criteria are you basing your promotions on? And is it criteria that is inclusive criteria and and not just for women, but actually for the non-stereotypical, if there is such a thing, of a man going into engineering. Men drift into engineering, don't we, in the way that some women drift into nursing.
Yeah.
And I want to avoid that.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Let's play another track. Come back again in a minute. Helen James is my guest this afternoon. She is Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Canterbury Christ Church University. She is Welsh Woman of the Year 2005. She has a number of other accolades to her name and has recently been awarded the OBE for services to higher education, particularly with regard to women and diverse students into science and engineering. Now, we were talking that your roots are in Barrow. You did come back to Barrow at one point in your career. Looking at Barrow today, Helen, what would be, if blue sky thinking, what would be your dreams for the region of Barrow, this Furness region, as we come out of the pandemic and perhaps have to reimagine our economy a little bit in the next few years?
Gosh, Andrew, that is a blinking tough question, isn't it? I could cop out and say, well, I haven't been back to Barrow for quite a while, but the reality is I go back quite regularly, so I can't cop out on that question. I think there's a real pride, and this is from a sort of an outside looking in, and I think you find many Barrovians are really proud of their roots in Barrow. And I think when you're on the outside, you can see the massive value of having a manufacturing and industry-based region. And there's possibly complacency around that. I work in other regions. So the one I'm in Kent at the moment, we're spending millions, and I'm creating a whole ecosystem, looking at schools, looking at young people, looking at careers, looking at industry, looking at further education, university education, to essentially build an engineering and technology ecosystem, because the region knows that that is the economic driver and for building wealth in the region. And somehow Barrow, maybe because it's isolated, I don't know, but we need that pride in our industrial heritage and build the supply chains. And I think sometimes when you've got such one big, massive employer, that can stifle innovation and creation of other small businesses, because you just get that natural drift into that larger company. And sometimes, possibly some of the most innovative times in Barrow has been perhaps when the shipyard is going through one of its kind of dips, and you do find new companies starting up and new innovations. I'm not really, I guess I'm not really answering your really question, am I?
But it's a very interesting perspective to take that. And I've, obviously I speak to a lot of people around Barrow in doing this great job that I've fallen into, and lots of people, some fantastic people in Barrow at the moment with some great ideas, and I've not heard that one, and that from that point of view. And it's probably because you have an interest in Barrow, but you don't live here anymore, so you've got that perspective on it and can see it from a distance.
One of the things, there's the Dock Museum, which I love going to the Dock Museum, but it could be so much bigger, and it could be that maybe the shipyard might want to think about working with schools and communities in a very positive way about science and engineering, and think about a science centre. Science centres exist in other areas, or are they themselves complacent because they're getting the workforce anyway? So why do that? But I think actually it's the responsibility of large organisations like that to work with communities. And I don't mean a science centre that's just about them promoting the technologies that are in the shipyard, but it's actually raising aspirations of young people. It's about getting families learning and being educated together and being inspired about science and engineering together, because there's lots of parents in Barrow that haven't got, and I'm not saying graduate education is everything, because it absolutely isn't.
No, yeah.
But actually, sometimes what I've found, and certainly some of my work in Brighton, it's a non-threatening way of educating the parents if you're actually something like the Science Centre, where you're educating the young person. And we've run so many programs where the parents come with the child, and then the parents are saying, actually, is there a program that I can now enrol on? And we've had FE and also universities that route into mature students coming in and then studying engineering. So just because they haven't got an engineering or science background as a parent doesn't mean to say they can't then get it.
Yeah.
I don't know what opportunities there are for that wider kind of community learning, really.
Oh, interesting stuff. Okay, then a final question to you, Helen. So, your focus throughout your career has been on young people. What would you say to a young person here in Barrow today?
I would be saying, follow your dreams, follow what you want to do. It's your life. It's not your parents' life. It's not your teacher's life. You're working for an awful lot of years, and think about what you're good at doing. Think about what you love doing, because you don't want to be doing something you don't want to be doing. And try to be true to yourself. Be authentic to yourself. Don't try and be somebody that you're not just because matey boy down the road is doing something, or matey girl down the road is doing something, doesn't mean to say that you have to. And that sounds, I don't know, maybe a bit purist. I don't know. And what you want at different stages in your life is going to be different. Just because you're embarking on a particular path now, that doesn't mean to say you've got to stay there. Be brave. Go take opportunities. Make opportunities yourself. Think big. Think that you will be successful. Don't compromise. Don't compromise, because life is fabulous and so many opportunities.
Oh, that's a great message. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and you are very welcome on Can Do FM whenever you feel like contributing or you're up in the area. Pop in.
Anytime, Andrea. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.